Started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Freeberg. I'm a program manager at Microsoft and a UCSB alumni. Um, I've recently gotten some questions from students via LinkedIn, a lot about job hunting, different roles in the tech industry, and also the transition between going from a college student to an early career professional. And of course, with all of this, COVID definitely doesn't help. I've talked to two students that had their internships canceled because their industries were hit hard due to COVID, which sucks. Um, and they were just looking for some productive ways to use their time since the summer internships were canceled. And so we can talk about projects too and a lot of these other topics. But first, let's introduce our two guests. So with us on the call, we have Tim Nguyen. He is an engineering lead at Cyal, former president of data science UCSB, an on-campus organization, and also graduated from UCSB 2019 with a bachelor's in statistics. We also have Samantha Lee on the call, currently a master's student at NYU and a former data science intern at Google. Also graduated from UCSB, class of 2018, also with the degree in statistics. That was also my major of choice, so if we have any stats majors on the call or in the chat, feel free to drop a question about that. And of course, if you're here on Clubhouse, admittedly, Clubhouse is new to me, but if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, or if you've got a topic you want to talk about, feel free to do that too. So, Samantha, Sam, Tim, how you guys doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
Me
for having
too.
us, dog.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this all day. Now, we've got a couple questions that came in on LinkedIn already, but before we get into those and the other topics, I think it'd be a good place for us to start with a little bit more background about what you guys currently do. So, Tim, let's go ahead and start with you. So, currently engineering lead at Cyal. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do day to day and what Cyal does?
All right, for sure. So first of all, thanks, Jason, for having me. Uh, and like Jason said, I'm an engineering lead at Cyal, and my day to day. Well, before we get into that, what Cyal is, really briefly, we just make data security for the cloud. And my role within Cyal is pretty broadly defined as just trying to deliver software to make our customers' lives easier. That's basically how I would describe it. And anything that really falls within that bounds, um, I think is considered my responsibility. So everything from customer interaction, trying to understand the problem, defining the requirements, and then after that, designing the feature, and then planning the implementation, and then managing the actual like work stream, and finally, making sure that the software gets delivered as the requirements were defined. That would be the scope of my responsibilities. And as far as the day-to-day goes, it involves actually a lot of talking to people and a lot of code review. Um, yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Awesome. Okay. And how was that transition from going from a
Um,
statistics
I guess
major?
I can go. So right now, I'm a master's student at New York University. I'm studying data science. I'm actually in my last semester. This program has been 2 years long, but I'm excited to graduate. Um, so I'm not currently working right now, but in my experience, I have worked at, smaller companies, smaller tech companies, as well as big tech companies, and then I also have a little bit of experience in construction management, if anyone's interested in that, and in mental health startups as well.
Awesome. And when you were at Google, what were you working on?
Yeah, I worked on Google Chrome specifically, and my internship was last summer, so unfortunately it was remote.
Okay.
But my primary job, so the way that the Google internship is structured is you work on um, one primary internship project during your time there, and then obviously you have the opportunity to explore other fields or other projects that you're interested in. But my main project was exploring using open source data, how Google Chrome compares to Safari, as well as Opera, other browsers, and as well as other apps. So like a question, for example, that I had to answer was, how is something like YouTube.com on the Chrome browser monopolized by using the YouTube app on your phone? And the answer to that is YouTube.com actually is, or I'm sorry, YouTube the app is the most popular app worldwide based on time spent in the app, which makes complete sense based on the nature of the app itself.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And actually, this might be a good time for an audience question while we're on the topic. He's a friend from UCSB. He's currently looking at data science roles. So he's got some research experience and some software background. And he wanted to know what the day-to-day experience was like for being a data scientist. So your internship at Google, at Procore. Do you think you could speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So to give a little backstory, I also worked in the analytics team at Procore, which if you go to Santa Barbara, I'm sure you know what that is. And I've also worked at data science internship at a mental health startup, like I mentioned. And for each of these three roles that I had, they were all pretty similar, but also very different. The day-to-day consists of coming in, a lot of meetings and a lot of organizing projects and working with your stakeholders to see what exactly they want to see in the data. That's a large part of the job. I'd say that's maybe anywhere from 40 to 50% of the job is working with the stakeholders and communicating, presenting findings or updates. Another 30% of the role would be with strictly programming. Or maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe 30 to 40% would be strictly programming. So this is anything from running analyses and making pretty notebooks to present to people, or even just like writing SQL queries and doing a little bit more of the back-end engineering and working with databases. I would even include, I did a little bit of dashboarding as well, and I would include that in that work. And then the final 10% is anything team related. So when you're in a data science role, you're not working in a sprint like a traditional software engineer. So it's a little bit scrappier and it's a little bit messier, I would say. And this last 10% is either on code reviews or collaborations or just vetting other people's work, because that's actually something that isn't as heavily stressed, but I think very important in the data science role. Is that 100%?
I noticed, Sam, that you got to 100%, but you didn't mention anything about like ping pong or enjoying the cafeteria. Isn't that the whole point of working in tech?
Arcade
Can
rooms.
you speak to that?
Okay, so in the 50% where I mentioned you're collaborating, that also means playing games. Waiting for your models to train, I mean.
There we go. That's what it is. Waiting for the models to train.
And I had a question for Tim earlier when he was going over his background, but I had a little mic issue here. So I was curious, when you started the role, how was that transition going from a statistics major to a software engineer?
Right. Yeah, that was definitely a big change. If you've done studied data science or statistics or anything, you'll realize that there's like some Python involved, some light scripting here and there, but ultimately, I realized this going in, that that's not really software engineering. That's not how you build software. And really, there's a lot of context there that I had to quickly catch up on, understanding stuff like resiliency, testing, understanding how to architect code so that it can be easily modifiable and whatnot, maintainable. And Yeah, basically, when you're working with bigger systems, there's a lot more collaboration involved than the one-off projects that I was used to when I studied statistics. So there's a whole lot more work that goes into making different pieces of work mesh well together.
Yeah, and I've noticed the same thing when I started working on the product I work on at Microsoft. Uh, like you said, managing all of these different dependencies between teams and things like that. Did you feel like you were like well prepared for that, or how was the ramp up with all that inter-team dependency for you?
So luckily, in the context of a startup, I joined when we were like 5 people. So the ramp up process was learning how to, turn my head away from my screen and open my mouth and say things to my team. And as long as I kept doing that and the communication kept flowing, everything seemed to go really well. Uh, as I said, I had a lot to learn, but my team was super, super supportive. They knew what kind of background I was coming from, and they were very patient with me. So it turned out to my benefit, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, it can be pretty daunting. I mean, coming fresh out of college, and software moves fast. Some of those meetings are pretty fast paced, and it can be hard to keep up sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Something I'm curious about for Jason actually is what is the transition like to working in a more product role? Similar to Tim, I think like we all study statistics, but we all ended up taking different paths with our majors.
Yeah, yeah. And don't let me forget, I wanted to we were all presidents of the data science club at one point, and I think it like Sam's stayed the most true to that role this entire time. So
Correct.
just shout out to Sam for that.
And just a quick note for the audience earlier, Jason introduced the Data Science Club as a school organization. We just want to clarify Jason is the founding president of the Data Science Club, meaning before Jason, there was no Data Science Club. And then after Jason, there was. That just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Thank you for the shout out. So to Sam's question, yeah, going from statistics undergrad to program manager at Microsoft, that was a really steep learning curve, you could say. So I work on a product. It's within Azure. It's essentially like a hosting platform for websites and API apps. So if you've used something like Heroku or Google Cloud has these platform services, it's somewhere between a VM and just plain software as a service. So if you have like a Python, a Django app, or a Java app or something, and you want to host it but not have to spin up your own VM and install everything, that's what app service is. That's the name of the product. And so in my role, I work right with engineering. And so right off the bat, I think I lacked a lot of the software engineering experience that I should have had. A lot of folks go first from software engineer to PM. And I think that's a good transition because you learn about software development at a much lower level. And I kind of took a lot of assumptions when I was first starting out. And eventually, I did some night classes at UW, University of Washington here. They have some vocational classes, so I did a class on Java development, and that really helped, I think, because from there I was able to do some of my own developments, make my own little Java web apps and host them on App Service. And I was able to use the product I'm PMing for as an end user. And that really, really helped. But overall, I'd say that that transition, yeah, it was pretty steep. But if you have the time and the energy to get your hands dirty and go down to those lower levels, it really can pay dividends. It did for me, at least.
Yeah, you taking night classes after work to get better at work is a very you thing. So kudos
I
there.
didn't know that you did that.
Me neither.
Yeah, yeah, it was a bit of a haul, because it was in the city and then you have to drive in. So it was a bit of a drag, but I think it paid off.
So actually, on that note, it sounds like both you and I had a lot to learn at the get-go. And I want to check with Sam what her experience was. It's having studied statistics and then going into a data science role. How much of a gap was there when you entered the role?
Wow. I want to, honestly, a lot. I think that, what school teaches you is a lot of the theory with probability and statistics. And at least for the stats program at UCSB and other ones that I've looked into, you do a lot of R and rarely any Python. And I found that in my experience, Python tends to be the more popular language. It's more widely known than R is. It has a little bit more functionality. People just like it more. So I had to do a lot of self-learning, and that's something that I think that I don't really think about enough because it was like part of my school experience. But I had to do a lot of self-learning, and the things that they don't teach you at school are the things that I ended up doing the most, that I ended up using the most in my role, and that I had to. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but there was a lot.
Yeah, it can be pretty tough, and imposter syndrome definitely doesn't help. I mean, I started working there, and there's some people that had been working at Microsoft, just Microsoft, longer than I had been alive. And so you can imagine,
Oh my gosh.
like, how intimidating that can be. And I guess if anyone gets in a similar situation, it's always okay to ask questions. I feel like in university, you're kind of expected to read the textbook and know the answer, but it'll pay dividends if you just get your unknowns answered earlier in the process rather than lie on assumptions that might bite you in the ass later down.
One big thing actually that I didn't add was when you're in school and you're studying your major, you spend a lot of time with these people in your major, and you're, doing study groups, talking to your professors, and it's like all these people who understand what you're saying when you say linear regression or when you say data mining. But one of the biggest challenges when transitioning to full-time work is, the majority of the people actually have no idea what these concepts are. And even though I might have learned the technical skills in school, when I transitioned to full-time, I had to learn about a lot of just like communication and being able to present my findings and my work in a way that's digestible by like a typical audience or a non-technical audience. I think that's where the challenges in the learning curve comes in.
Sam, I feel you. So like a lot of students, when we do these types of things, a lot of students, the first question on their mind is like, oh, what programming language should I learn? What technical skills should I learn? What model should I like study, And I feel like after the time I've spent working, I can confidently say you should work on your communication skills. I mean, assuming that your technical abilities are like, at least where it should be, then the next biggest, like lowest hanging fruit is definitely communication skill, whether that's presenting or writing or just like talking to someone else and trying to get your understanding across.
I think this is actually something that Jason, Tim, and myself have talked about in the past personally, but when you're in a work setting, people don't really care how you get to the answer. And if anything, it might be better for you to get to the answer, in the simplest, easiest way possible. And that's something that's very different from school, because in school, you have the ability and the time to explore all of these really cool things. Like you're doing a project for a data mining class, and you want to choose like the hardest algorithm that you possibly can find, or you can explore any data that you're interested in. And that's actually not the case when you're working at a company. Most of the time people just want to see averages or, ranges, maxes, mins, things like that. They don't really care that you have, you've like completely implemented this cool neural network to figure out like a regression or something.
Facts.
You'll explain all that nice, intricate detail, and engineering's first question will be, okay, yeah, but what's the API for it? How do I use it?
Exactly.
Gosh.
So I received a question through a message, and I think it's pretty relevant here. So the question is, how do you communicate better? What defines better communication and less ideal communication? And I want to hear your guys' thoughts there.
Me first. Because actually, when Tim was talking about this just a second ago, I was going to put him on the spot and ask the same question, but I think Tim started to get at the answer. Talking to other people. You know, if you're a student or early career person, if you just have coffee chats, reach out to people, and just talk more about what you're doing with somebody who's interested, then I mean, if you have a coffee conversation with someone in your network and you're talking with them, you'll probably realize that they don't have all the same context you do or the background. So you'll slowly learn how to explain things and meet them where they're at. I think just going out and expanding your network by talking to people could really work well.
Yes, and I think when you say meeting them where they're at, there's two parts to that, and you covered one of them, which is to know what the gap is in their understanding and yours, so that you can fill that gap. And the other part of meeting them where they're at is understanding what they care about and what they completely do not give two shits about, so that you're not wasting their time. Because, like Sam said earlier, if I'm trying to answer a question and I choose to do so with the most advanced model or the most advanced algorithm, chances are, if the question I'm answering is for the marketing team, what they care about is the answer. Maybe they're not so interested in the algorithm that got us there, not as interested as the team that I'm working on it with.
So I think you guys have talked about like communication when you're communicating with a team, but you know, my strategy is to just come into a meeting or a lunch or whenever I talk to anybody really with just like empathy and with kindness and to understand that they're people too. There's different kinds of meetings that you're gonna have. Like sometimes it'll be a little more professional or someone who's on a different pay grade than you or whatever it may be, but to just come in and be very open with them or whoever it is that you're talking to and, you know, be willing to accept that there's some things that they know and there's some things that you know and to ask questions where you need it.
I think another great way to just get better at technical communication is working in group projects, which I know is probably a big topic for the three of us, but projects in general, I think, can be a great way to expand your portfolio, which we can talk about. But working on a team is kind of like getting two birds with one stone, because you're going to have to work with people like we've been talking about, you know, explain things where they're at. You're going to need things from them. They're going to need things from you to keep the project moving forward. And then you'll also be working on whatever the subject matter is. I mean, a project doesn't have to be a programming project, right? If you're a business major, you can do a little on-campus business and sell stuff. But I think if you do both of those things, it'll really get you best of the both worlds.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And a huge plug for the UCSB Data Science Club.
Yeah.
Actually, I would totally agree with that. I would say that the data science club helped me learn how to communicate like point blank, because that's where I was trying to accomplish a goal with a team, and there basically has to be some knowledge share there going on. Yes, that does have to happen in the context of group projects, but we all know how those tend to go. So yeah, I would totally echo what you said, Jason. And also, Sam, when you brought up empathy, I think really to sum it up, that is the key in ideal or effective communication, because that means you understand the context that they need and no more than that. And that's really, I think, the ideal communication right there.
So we just got a question on YouTube here, and I think it fits in well here. So the question is, what are the biggest challenges that you guys have solved, both technical and non-technical? And so I can start this one off. So in my work, like I said, it's a hosting platform for for web apps, websites, APIs, things like that. And recently, we've been working with Red Hat. If you're not familiar with them, they're an open source software company, and they make an enterprise Java application server called JBoss. And we've been working with them to essentially host their service on top of app service. So that way customers can move these old legacy heavy Java enterprise apps, put them on app service, and then they get all the benefits of this hosting platform. And then they also get the enterprise support from Red Hat. And so that's been technically very challenging because it's a whole new ecosystem that I've had to ramp up on. And from a non-technical perspective, you can imagine working with a totally different company who have different timelines, and then down to the little details, like they don't use Microsoft Teams, so sometimes communication gets caught up, and you got to use snail mail, and then all the other things around that. So working with marketing, finance to price these products and to get the term sheet signed. So that's been a huge project for me lately.
Thanks for the example. Sam, you got anything?
I'm actually still thinking because I almost feel like every example that I think of tends to be like a communicative issue. Or...
I think that's important to address. Can you talk about that?
Working with either whether the issue is managerial or whether it's with a teammate or having to follow up insistently with other people. Those are some challenges that I've had to overcome. Technical wise, this might not sound like the most interesting or the most complicated, but when I entered my first job, I didn't actually know a lick of SQL. I had written, I know, select star from X table where, color equals blue or something like that. But there's a lot more to SQL than that meets the eye, I guess. It's actually a pretty powerful language, if you can call it a language. And learning SQL and then having my manager actually write on my annual review, how I quickly became, the best SQL writer programmer on the team was something that I was really proud of. So I think it's just, on the technical side, it's learning things that you didn't realize you had to learn and having to learn them fast.
I think that sort of rounds up that answer. And then there was a question from the same person also about
Jason.
Tim didn't go yet.
Yeah, Jason, come on, man.
Sorry.
I think the toughest technical challenge is what I'm currently working on. It's basically paying off tech debt and understanding when to make the right trade-offs. The name of the game is basically making the best trade-offs you can and trying to understand what factors are part of the equation. For those of you who will need this context, basically tech debt is the idea that when you're building things as quick as the startup tends to build, you make choices that prioritize for speed and the ability to provide features at great speed. And as a result, you end up cutting corners and making decisions that, might slow you down soon. And at a certain point, you have to end up paying that tech debt off. And the reason it's called debt or tech debt is because it's very similar to, financial debt, if you're familiar with the concept, as many of us students might be. So basically, it might sound like a really bad thing, but if you think about it, everybody takes on debt, the financial one, for a reason. And in the same way, everyone takes on technical debt for the same reason. The only thing is, at a certain point, it needs to be paid off. So the decision-making process that's involved in how you tackle that tech debt is something that I'm trying to wrap my head around right now, and I find it really intriguing.
Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts on that topic. Sorry I cut you off there earlier, Tim. But there's another question from the same person. I think, Sam, you might be a good person to speak to this one. And it's simply, do you have any data science job hunting tips?
I have general job hunting tips, but anything that's specific to data science, something that I've noticed in job postings for data science now is that they're a little bit more niche and catered to different areas of the role. So before you would apply to a general data science role, and they could end up putting you in a machine learning engineering role, or a business analytics role, or something like that. But now it actually looks a little bit more defined. So it'll say data scientist, experimentation, which means that you'll work a lot with A/B testing and designing experiments in that way, and doing a little bit more of a researchy sort of role. Or it'll say data science, machine learning, engineering, and the job description will actually say that you'll be doing that. Or it'll say data scientist analytics. So now that they're a little bit more specific, I would say it's important to cater your resume to that role. Have some projects on your resume that, you designed the entire research study end to end. That'll be really great for experimentation. Or you have a little bit of causal inference experience. If it's something more analytics, then maybe you built out a dashboard, like a Shiny dashboard or something. If it's machine learning engineering, then you deployed a project and you have experience with a lot of popular algorithms that you will definitely be asked on in the interview. And yeah, that's something that I noticed for data science.
And what were those categories again?
Typically, I've seen experimentation, analytics, and machine learning.
Okay.
Can you talk more about catering your resume, like perhaps even in a broad sense, like how much it matters, and I guess what the aim is there?
Yeah. When I mean catering your resume, I mean obviously you've only worked 3 or 4 roles at most, like if you're just graduated. But something that like bullet points and the information that you have on your resume could be a little bit different depending on what it is that you're exactly applying for in your next job. And this would even apply if you want to switch out of data science or you want to switch into data science. If you want to switch into data science, then maybe you have a little bit more of like an analytical twist to your resume. You say that you looked at this data which led to this result or something like that, or changing up your projects a little bit, because even if you don't have the work experience and maybe you did a side project on the side that is relevant to the role that you're applying for. And what I do for this actually is I have a master Google Doc of everything that I've ever done. And I kind of just pick and choose, and this doc was like maybe 3 pages long or something. And then I kind of pick and choose what I want to put onto my resume on a separate Google Doc. And then export that to whatever role that I want to see.
That's actually great. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. So it really sounds like if I'm looking at more than one specific role, then really I should plan to have more than one version of my resume, which I, by the way, currently don't, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, and it also is really helpful to keep track of your accomplishments and things that you've done, because it's very easy to do an amazing project one year and then kind of just forget what you did at the end of the year or something like that.
I have the same problem when it comes to my
like peer reviews or annual reviews.
Yeah, exactly.
What, you just accomplished so much that it's easy to forget what all you've accomplished?
Pretty much.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
And that, folks, is exactly the position you want to be in.
So this is exciting. We've got our first Clubhouse, I guess you'd say audience member with their hand raised. So let's try this out. The name is Egg Dresses Up. Here, let me hit the button. Hey, are you there?
Hi, my name's Egg Dresses Up.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. Okay, so to address the name, this is basically like my Instagram handle, but I can't change it anymore because Clubhouse only allows you to change your name once.
Oh, no.
However, I have a question for you guys, and sorry to pivot from the resume tips and those things, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit philosophical on you guys. Can you guys talk about your relationship with your career path and whether or not you treat it as a passion or just a means of making income, or maybe even both? But I know a lot of people early on in their careers basically have pressure to do something that they're both passionate about, but they can also monetize. So, me personally, I kind of feel like unfulfilled in my jobs sometimes because, it's not something that brings me a lot of joy, but I do know that it pays the bills so that maybe I can use those. Yeah, you can use that income to, pursue other passions. I just wanted to get your guys' opinions on that.
So right off the bat, while you were asking that question, I got two messages from two different people saying I love this question. So thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Anyone want to go first?
That's a fucking tough one. So I've been talking a lot about this with my very close friend and coworker, and yeah, we've been asking the same questions like on a repeated basis. And where I find myself falling is that, to be quite honest with you, I'm not quite sure what my passions are as of today. I know what I enjoy, but I don't quite know. Maybe those are my passions. Maybe I just don't understand what passion is. But where I'm at right now is that I'm, enjoying my job. It does put money on the table, and it does provide me the optionality to pursue the things that I do enjoy, like making music, cooking, traveling, whatnot. And if those do happen to be my passions, and yet my job day to day is not aligned with it. For example, I'm not a chef. If my passion is cooking, I'm not a chef, or I'm not like, I don't know, dead mouse. If I like really enjoy making EDM, then to be quite honest with you, right now that's okay with me because I enjoy my job. I enjoy what I'm learning, and I enjoy the optionality that it provides me. That's currently where I'm at. But just to be clear, I'm totally still figuring it out, just like most people are.
It's a good question. I think for me, the way I kind of look at it is I really like a lot of the activities involved with my current job. So by that I mean I like that I get to work with different teams, talk with customers. There's writing involved, like writing specs. You get to do demos. Sometimes it gets more technical, so it's hands on, and I'm writing some code for like a proof of concept or a demo or something like that. Um, and then when I kind of look at it in that lens, I really, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with the work that I get to do. Um, I'm pretty blessed to have the job that I have. But I would say if anyone's in the position where they are trying to find what their passion is, a career is kind of, yeah, a career is an evolving process, right? So one thing I am very passionate about is teaching. Um, but I sort of plan out my career, and I would like to teach at a certain point later down the line, but um, I think it'd be much easier to do what I'm doing now and then become a teacher at a later point in time if I wanted to. Um, and so maybe not
And
terribly philosophical, but yeah, Tim.
and to be clear, when you say teaching, and this is a kind of a point I want to make too, but when you say you really enjoy teaching, there must be some aspects of your job that afford you the opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah. So when like a new person joins the team and there's some aspects of our service to ramp them up on, I always look for those opportunities. That's a lot of fun. Um, and also when I'm doing demos, you have to educate the customer on everything that's going on as part of that demo. So I love that opportunity too.
Right. And I think where I've landed there is I know, besides like my hobbies, I know what things I enjoy broadly. For example, I too really enjoy teaching, and I think Sam and Jason both do as well. And besides that, I also enjoy, I guess, design or creative work. And there's aspects of my job that call for that. So For me, achieving satisfaction has had a lot to do with finding the opportunities in my work to, I guess, flex or practice the things that I enjoy and seeing how I can make more of my job relate to those things.
Um, I don't know if my answer will be the most satisfying or the most, I don't know, like scandalous, but I guess like the reason why I chose data science is I view it as a skill set. Um, you know, being able to code, being able to communicate, being able to pull together presentations and analyze data, like look at a data set and know what to do with it. I view it very much as a skill set that can be applied to what I actually am passionate about. Um, so that's really why I like it, is because I have so many passions that I can kind of apply these skills to whatever realm or field that I really am interested in. So I think that's the most important part of looking for a job, is not necessarily the work that you're doing, but you know, the mission that you're working toward, or the people that you're working with, and the opportunities that you may have at that job. Like those are the things that I actually look for when I'm job hunting. The managers that you have is actually a really important one that I didn't mention earlier. And you know, for me, even if that means that I won't be doing the most cutting edge deep learning techniques, that's okay with me, because I know I derive more happiness around mission-driven work and working with really cool people than I do, you know, working at like the top tech company or something like that.
While you guys are on this topic, I actually have another add-on question, if that's okay. So Sam mentioned, you know, like start kind of sarcastically, like working for the top cutting edge tech company, right? I also kind of feel like a lot of people are guilty of like comparing ourselves to others, you know, especially early on in our career, like achieving milestones. Like I want to make this salary by this age, and I want to get to this position title by this age as well. Um, do you guys have any experiences with that?
Can I go first on this one, guys?
Yeah,
Go for
Jason.
it.
Because this is so. I feel like my answer for your last question was kind of unsatisfying, but this topic is something I actually had it on my notes here because I wanted to bring it up. So I'm glad you did. Um, I struggled with that a lot in college, especially. You know, I was really guilty of comparing myself to, you know, my friends in similar majors, people I knew that were in stats or computer science, and I'd be like, oh damn, why did Jimmy get that internship? And for me, my particular problem was comparing myself to other people, yeah, you know, around me or in my cohort, um, and it's something I struggled a lot with. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of advice for coping with it. I feel like in my case, I was investing so much time into the data science club um, at UCSB. And for a while, I felt like I was kind of risking time because I could have been investing all that energy elsewhere. And, you know, my dad, he's pretty old school. And so he, you know, was advising me to just invest more in my grades. And anytime I brought up the club and how the club was doing, the conversation wrote back to and how our class is doing, you know. And so, um, yeah, in my case, I was always comparing myself to other people. And I feel like that went away for a little while once, you know, you hit a milestone, like when I finally got this current job. But then I feel like as of late, I've slowly been slipping and now comparing myself to the people around that I work with. You know, why does this person, you know, get this promotion, that sort of thing, or this project? And um, so I think it goes beyond just at school when I experienced it the most. Um, and I think what it boils down to mainly is just jealousy, at least in my case. And so, if there are any guides online or resources for dealing with jealousy, maybe those would be applicable too. I don't know, Sam, Tim, did you guys ever deal with that?
Actually, I can speak on the jealousy bit. So, getting away from the whole professional aspect of this question, in general, so I used to have a huge problem comparing myself to others too. And at some points nowadays, I still have like somewhat of a chip on my shoulder. And ultimately, what changed for me was I, at one point, I think in college or something, read or heard a very, I think, cognizant idea on this topic, which is that there's nothing wrong with comparing yourself to other people. And that might be counterintuitive since all the time we always hear, yeah, focus on yourself, never compare yourself to others. That's only going to make you upset, whatever. Ultimately, what I landed at was that it's okay to compare yourself to others, but you also have to realize that you have to compare your whole self with their whole self and ask yourself, if you're jealous of them, would you really be willing to trade every aspect of your life for every aspect of their life? So in Jason's case, if we're going to use Jason as an example, Jason was spending time on the club while maybe his friends were focusing on grades, or maybe not even his friends, but anyone else around him was focusing on grades and getting like crazy cool internships. But ultimately, would Jason be willing to give up every single memory or moment that he spent with the data science club, including this talk that we're having today, to exchange for what those people had that he was jealous of? That is ultimately where I landed.
That's so good. I love that advice too.
That's great.
It's not mine. It's from this smart guy named Naval. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess piggybacking on that, that's kind of how I came to where I'm at right now. I definitely struggled more with jealousy and comparing and, expecting to hit this milestone by the time that I was 23 or something like that. But I, had to learn very early on that everybody is on completely different timelines. And if it is one of your goals to earn, $500,000 by the time that you're 24, that's and as a 24-year-old, that's really not my goal. I think that's okay. All of us are different, and I've met so many different people with so many different trajectories, even if we all had the same starting spot, that it's actually been more inspiring for me than it is to be a place of like negativity. And it's really taught me that, just fucking do what you like, and who cares what other people are doing.
yeah, and actually, when you say it's like become like inspirational for you, I think that's what I was trying to get at. Like, if you want to compare yourself to others, it's totally fine. Like, there is some benefit to that. So, yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Good question, Anne.
Thanks.
Don't you mean egg?
Sorry, sorry, egg.
Last name dresses up.
Yeah, last name dresses up. Jason, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think you wrapped it up pretty well, Tim. You put a nice bow on it and everything. And as you're talking about it, it reminded me what my mom always told me growing up, is that you never really know what someone else is going through. Although she always said that, like, when someone's being off-putting to you in some sort of way, you never know what else is going on. But I think you can apply that um, same idea to jealousy, where you don't know what else that person has going on. Maybe you don't want, like you said, everything that they have.
Birdie is so wise.
I'll clip this segment and I'll send it to her.
Hey, I received a question that's related to data science. Uh, and actually, the person's in this room, so if they could raise their hand and ask the question for Sam, I think Sam could help out.
Here we go. All right, Gabe, you're on deck. Is he? There we go. I think the app is a little slow. Let me try again.
Yeah, I heard that this app is like built and maintained by like a very, very small team, which is super impressive.
Okay,
Hey, sorry,
you
can
went
you hear
through. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, I just had a quick question. I apologize because I came a little bit late, so feel free to let me know if this is a repeat. But during the data science interview process, what should I look for in a would-be supervisor to ensure they will facilitate a high-growth career? And also bonus points, do you have any advice for how to determine this?
Ooh, what an interesting question. Um, I have actually, so I feel like a lot of people think that when you're looking for a manager, you want to look for someone who knows everything that you're going to be doing in your job. So you might want to ask them technical questions like, please tell me everything you know about natural language processing or something. And I've actually met managers who feel like they have this pressure to know everything. And I actually don't think that's the case. Um, a good manager is not necessarily someone who can pretty much do your job for you. I think a good manager is someone who supports you and who is someone who is willing to see your growth. So when you're looking for a good manager, I think that you should. Some good things to ask that I generally ask at every interview is, who is the executive sponsor, or what is the direction of the team going to be, or what are some new projects that the team is looking to work on, and is there something that maybe in my experience that I could be involved with? And those are actually the things that will help you further you in your career than having a manager who knows everything who knows how to do everything that you're supposed to be doing in your job. If you do want to ask a more technical question, something that I typically would want to know is, what are your thoughts on, the database setup in at this company? What are the primary languages, and is there room for using other languages? What is the review process like? These are typically more, I think, operational questions, and these are things that the manager should know. But definitely just look for someone who's definitely excited about seeing you grow.
That was great. Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah.
I think we've got another question here. Where was it? Oh, yeah, on YouTube. It's a question from Jordan. I'd love to know about Samantha's experience with NYU's master program. Getting into the program, why you chose NYU, also why she chose to further her education instead of working in the industry.
Yeah, so I had always known that I wanted to go back to school and get some kind of graduate degree. And when I first was applying, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go the more computer science, software engineering route, if I wanted to further my statistics knowledge and do like a stats master's, or do data science. Data science masters are pretty new, but I ultimately ended up going this direction because I feel like it combined the software engineering and the statistics trajectories. And the reason why I chose NYU, well, the biggest reason is because, I'm originally from California. I went to UCSB. I worked at Procore, so my entire life had kind of been in the West Coast, specifically Southern California. And all of the other schools that I had applied to and gotten into were also still in the same area. And I figured a huge reason for me personally was more of like a life decision where I could move to the East Coast for 2 years. If I hated it, then it's only 2 years. If I loved it, then, I'd had the experience. And NYU specifically, I'm really glad that I chose this program because a lot of the professors are actually, research and industry leaders in the field. I'm taking a class this semester on, responsible data science, which really means like algorithmic fairness and how can you be unbiased as a data scientist. And the Professor Julia Stojanovic is amazing. She's like, she spearheaded pretty much like the whole responsible data science movement. Jan LeCun is, the deep learning professor. And I worked with a lot of professors who work at FAIR in their free time, or not in their free time, as like also part of their job. Or one of my favorite professors also works in the music department and in data science, which is really interesting to me. I like the structure of the program too, because so you have to take 4 required classes as well as a capstone, but the rest of your curriculum is pretty much up to you to fill up with electives of your choice. So I chose to take some in the applied stats for social research department. I know I have a lot of classmates and friends who take courses in computer science or in math or at NYU Stern, which is their business school. So it's really interesting how like all of us kind of came in and made the program like what we wanted it to be.
And I think here I've got a question for everyone. A lot of times on data science job postings, so I'm not pursuing this field anymore, but I remember when I was, you'd see it on a lot of job postings, you know, masters required. I wonder, Sam, did that have a big influence in your decision too?
So, you know, when I had originally started, I thought that to be a data scientist, you would need either, pick one, like a PhD, or you would need a master's degree and a few years of experience, or you would need like 10 years of experience with just a bachelor's degree. But I found that's actually the case. I think I've seen a lot of people grow into data science roles really fast, like just a few years out of their undergraduate degree, or you know, they start out in like a business analyst role and then within a year they transition into data science. So I feel like that's a soft requirement for job postings, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, cool.
So I
yeah, go
can't
ahead.
speak to like how much it like actually impacts the decision, but yes, I can say it's very fucking daunting.
We've got another hand raised here. Let's see if this works. Rika, I'll hit the button here. Let's give it a sec. Perfect.
Hello.
Hey, Rika.
Hi. I just had a question regarding maybe like your first ever job. I'm actually really new to all of this. I was a microbiome major, so kind of like, you know, lost in a lot of ways. But your first ever job, I'm still a ways away from it. How picky can you be in terms of like what kind of community, work community you want to work with, and you know, like management and things like that? Only because like you don't want to be miserable, but maybe sometimes you have to just accept the job that you get because it's your first ever job. And then also, I was kind of worried about if you get a job in maybe specializing in a language or a team that you're not very like, you don't want to keep doing that for the rest of your career, and you do your first job as that, and you kind of have to keep going in that direction.
Are you a UCSB student?
I graduated already, and I'm actually starting Lambda School. It's the web development boot camp in March.
Got it. Okay, cool. And are you looking at any vertical in particular, like data science, front end, back end?
I'm actually going for like full stack software engineering at the moment.
Got it. Okay.
So before we
Yeah.
get to the specifics, I would say that how picky you can be in general is determined by the broader set of circumstances that apply to your specific case, in the sense that if you had unlimited time, in other words, unlimited money, and or no urgency to start your career, then you could theoretically be as picky as you want and spend as much time as you want getting the skills you need to get the exact job you want. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, no, I mean, I feel like for me, I wasn't very picky at all. My internships back in college and my current job, they all came through one way or another from the data science club. And once the opportunity came up, I usually pursued it through and then took it at the end of the day. I didn't do a whole lot of cross shopping, especially with the internships. I didn't feel like it was terribly important. So in my case, I wasn't that picky at all. I don't know, Tim, Sam, if you guys ever had competing offers or
I
dealt
guess
with
my
this.
question would be like, do you just take what you get and roll with it, like as a newcomer, you know, first job?
So I think I really apologize for not answering the question you just asked directly, but perhaps this
It's
helps.
fine.
Your question earlier, I think, about getting stuck in what you initialize in, I think is kind of the key to helping yourself figure this out for, because it's different for everyone. So the way I view it is, regardless of what I'm doing at my current job, I am 100% confident that uh, the way in which I'm doing my job each day and the way I'm paying attention to how I do my job results in learning that I am 100% confident will transfer to many other areas of application. And because I believe that so strongly, I can, sell that story to whoever's interviewing me. And yeah, I'm fairly confident that it will, actually work out in that way. So from like my perspective, I don't really have a concern of getting locked in. Maybe, yes, uh, what's on your resume may confine whether or not you get the interview. But from there, if you can present yourself as someone who's willing to pick up new things, then I don't quite think it's a concern that you have to have.
Thank you.
I also, yeah, I want to add that you're completely not locked into your first job. Um, I know it might seem kind of hard when you're first starting out. I felt like I wanted to accept the first job that came my way. Um, but it's okay. I know there's like, it's popular advice that you have to stay at your first role for a year. Um, and I can see why people would want to do that because maybe it'll take a year for you to really see what the role in the company and what working is like. But if you are genuinely unhappy in your first role, then you should definitely leave. Look for something else, whether that's going back to school, whether that's a new job, whether that's a completely new field, or like going to Lambda school, which I think is amazing.
Thank you.
I think this might be a good time. I wanted to bring up networking as a topic for us to talk about. Because I remember back in college, networking came up like in every single um, career services event. Every time someone was giving career advice, they said, get out and go network. But it just seemed like such a vague, ambiguous topic, and even more vague and ambiguous as something to go and do. Um, but I've been reading a book called The 2 Hour Job Search, which I'm only like a chapter or two into it, and it's a good read so far. I have high hopes for the rest of it. But the author defines networking, I think, really well as acquiring internal referrals who will help get you job interviews. Short and sweet. And my question for Tim and Sam is, were you guys active quote unquote networkers in college? Was that something, I guess I'm going to get up and network this evening? Is that something that crossed your mind ever?
Before I answer that question, I just want to put a disclaimer out there that I'm not disagreeing with the definition that you got from that book. I think it's totally correct. Uh, but I can also say that it mostly defines the outcome, not necessarily the way that you have to go about networking. So in my case, I didn't actively network. I think I just wanted to make friends, and it turned out the people that I was interested in, it turned out to be
Yeah.
not bad choices. Jason, Sam, not too shabby.
We're just your network.
Yeah, you guys are literally just my network. No, yeah, I'm actually, anywhere I go in general, like data science club, really anywhere in life in general, I'm just trying to make friends with people who I'm interested in. And if they so happen to be valuable assets when it comes to my professional life, then that's really all the better. I'm actually joined in this room by two of my very close friends and coworkers, so that just speaks more to my point.
Nice. Yeah, I had the same experience. I focused a lot of my time on the club, and then as that grew, I met people in the same, general industry, and when they graduated and got jobs, that's how I ended up getting tips for internships. And then, of course, we also brought in local companies. And then I know that's how a couple people in the club got hired. So, yeah, I think, Tim, you and I had pretty similar networking experiences in college.
In other words, we're big chillers. We're just chillers, looking to chill.
But I think there is something to that. Like, if you put in the effort, you sort of increase your surface area for those things to happen.
Totally. So I would say, in that sense, I focus on putting in effort on putting myself out there, not necessarily from a results-based perspective, trying to grow my network. Do you see what I mean?
I
think, yeah.
Yeah, I do, and that's the topic of the book. Is it's essentially like a guide on how to do what the definition says. So it's a lot more cut and dry, procedural, with that end goal in mind. And sometimes that's what people need. You know, if they're out of a job, they may not have that luxury to just be big chillers, like you said.
Yep, totally agree.
Okay, so I am totally also a big fan of the organic networking and just trying to make friends with people.
Big chillin'.
But I will represent the intentional networkers here and maybe give a little bit of advice, if that helps anybody, for some strategies for intentional networking. So something that you could do, especially now in COVID times when you can't really go out and get a coffee with someone or go to a networking event. I have seen people reach out to me on LinkedIn to like set up like a Zoom date or something like that, or an opportunity to meet someone one-on-one with full intention of it being more of a professional meetup, not a date or something. But,
oh no, where's this going?
But basically what I want to say is, like, if you feel like maybe you there's someone who's in a role that you want to be in, or in a job that you want to be in, and you don't currently have a friend who works there, it's completely okay to reach out to them on LinkedIn and ask for 30 minutes of their time to either do a virtual coffee chat, or if they're comfortable, in actual coffee chat, and talk about some of your goals, where you want to be, why you're interested in their work, and you want to learn about them. I think that's really key here, is you really want to learn about other people and their experiences. And that will also help you grow your network.
Yeah, I think the genuine interest that you were talking about at the end there is really key.
Yeah, definitely. And this helps you with more of just learning how learning and meeting people who you might not necessarily have met before or in another setting.
And I think it has the added benefit, if you go into those sorts of coffee chats, networking chats, with that genuine interest to just learn more about that person and what they do, it can also really help you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. What sort of job do you actually want? If you go in to learn more about what these people are doing, as opposed to with the sole focus of using them as a means to an end. Because you might learn that, well, actually, I don't want to be, an accountant or whatever.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like, don't be afraid to ask about the dirty part of the job or the things that people don't necessarily talk about. And I'm sure that they would be willing to share, just give you an honest opinion of their experience.
I remember I did that a lot back in college, because I came in as a chemistry major, and it turned out that I really sucked at chemistry. And so I went on LinkedIn and I reached out to people that were working in like data science roles, or people that graduated like with a degree in economics. And then eventually that led me to a person that was working as an actuary. and I learned more about what they did, and then I realized, oh, okay, actually, I don't want to be an actuary. So again,
I went through the same exact thing. No, dude, the actuarial field is such a trap. They actually have an active campaign going on to make more people become actuaries.
oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
remember all those advertisements. Yeah, they really, the stats department really loves that actuary program.
yeah.
Lots of marketing.
I received an interesting question that I think will apply to really anyone who's in the corporate world, so I want to bring it up. Um, the question is, you're all in technical or engineering roles. What do you think about the idea, or what's your opinion on the thought that engineering is the most important function in a company? Because that is an often dominant bias that exists in.
I so I actually at Procore worked on the revenue team. I was an analyst and I supported the sales team, the customer success team. I did a little bit of marketing, and I. It's so interesting because you say that engineering is the most important, but then when you're working with salespeople, they think that they're the most important.
Everyone does.
Everyone just
Yeah.
thinks they're the most important job function.
So, sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Um, I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm empathetic to engineering being a core focus, and as a program manager, I'm technically within the engineering org at Microsoft, but I mean, like literally the software engineers, not including PM. I'm really empathetic to that being a core focus. Though I think you have to have the correct focus for all those teams to work on, and a lot of that um, that comes from the top of the company is what are the key focus areas that those different engineering teams are going to be focusing on. Because even if you have a well-funded engineering team, it can be difficult to achieve good outcomes if you're following 5 different strategies at the same time, or trying to develop too many features that haven't been well understood or specced out.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have thought about this myself personally before, and where I landed at was the more I learn about the different functions in a company, I can all see the very valid reasons for why each function would think that they are the most important. And I know this is a very cop out type of answer, but all functions are important ultimately. And top of mind for me are sales and engineering, because if there's no, or if your sales team doesn't perform, then no one's going to buy what you're building, and you're not going to get the opportunity to build because you will run out of money. If your engineering team is underperforming, then you will have nothing to sell. So those two really go hand in hand for me. I know that marketing is also a plays a big important role in getting people to even talk to you in the first place, for the sales team to contact them. So really, I'm starting to learn more and more about the different functions outside of the engineering parts of things, and I'm starting to gain a lot of respect for the other functions of a company.
Can't believe you didn't have it before.
Because I ascribe to the bias that afflicts many people who work in tech, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, but I'm learning.
Another job hunting tip for people who are interested in data science. So usually it will fall under its own category as data and analytics, or it would fall under engineering and tech. But if you actually look in something like marketing, then you might see a data science role there for marketing science, or for different kinds of analytics in job functions outside of engineering. So, just a tip to look everywhere, because data science can fall anywhere.
Good tip. Let's see. What were we on before that question? Was it networking?
Yeah.
We were talking about the stats department and the different majors. So I think this question is relevant. It's from YouTube. I hope I pronounced this right. Enoch. Says, hi, I'm a student in statistics and data science major. Great to see the representation from the Data Science Club. What efforts do both of you think can help students to stand out in the data science major?
I can't speak to this.
Join the Data Science Club.
Yeah.
Actually, I can. You're right, Sam. Sam's right. Join this data science club. Work with the other people who are interested in, doing their own projects, because what I found is those are the people who will stand out. When you work with them, you will also stand out. Sam, does that sound about right to you? What else is there?
Yeah, I think so. Remember how I talked about the stats program only teaching you certain skills and I had to do a lot of self-learning? A lot of that self-learning came from being involved in the Data Science Club.
And for those who don't have context about the Data Science Club, can you explain what we're all talking about when we say, yeah, we got a lot out of being in the Data Science Club? What did it mean to be and participate in the Data Science Club?
So for me, within this question's context, it really put me in touch with different professors. So I was able to get, a professor to sign off on my internship to count towards elective credit in the major. And then there was another research-based class that was sponsored by a couple different professors. And I think, Sam, you might have done that one too. I think it was like 194 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the actuarial capstone research thing, I think.
Exactly, yeah. But then in other ways, to Tim's question now, like, what does the Data Science Club do for you? I mean, I was always on the admin board, right? Because I was the president. And so for me, I learned how to be a leader and an organizer within a technical domain, which I think helps a lot for being a program manager in my current role, because you have to work with other people, explain needs, give context on why we're doing certain things and when we're doing them. And then all of that happens within a technical domain. Just like the Data Science Club focuses on educating students on data science, but now it's hosting platforms for websites and things like that. But I think there was a transfer of skills there.
Yeah, and I like what Jason said about being able to meet professors and have all these opportunities that the club kind of brought to you as a member. So, for example, I remember having a lot of professors email me directly. Literally, they will know my email and email me about, we have this talk and we'd like some members from the club to come and maybe for the first 15 minutes have just a one-on-one with whoever the speaker is. And these are just like opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily advertise to their classes. We'd also have a lot of job postings. I have built a lot of relationships with professors who ended up writing me letters of recommendation for my master's program. And it's just a really nice way to meet people who are really interested in the same things that you're interested in. And the really cool thing about the club that I feel is very underrated is that it's just the enthusiasm of all the members there. We have the three of us who met through the club, and we're all still really good friends. A few years after graduation, we still keep in touch. And all of the
I do
members
this for professional reasons, Sam.
and
Tim's networking right now.
You guys. And just like week after week going to the meetings, people that go want to be there, and it's always fun. It's like a Wednesday night and you're just hanging out with people, coding together, which sounds extremely nerdy, but it's a really, really fun time.
It was very nerdy. I think we can squeeze in one last question here. So another YouTube question. Hi, I'm a statistics and data science major, and I am interested in business intelligence. How useful is the TMP certificate from UCSB, and would an MBA be helpful? Before we jump into that, I'm going to say Next week on Sunday, I'm going to have my friend Matt on here, and he's a business intelligence specialist at a cybersecurity company. So just wanted to put that plug out there. But to kick this question off, I did the TMP certificate at UCSB, and I have mixed opinions about it. I think that the certificate itself probably won't do a whole lot as far as your resume goes, because it's one, a certificate, it's not a minor, so I think a lot of recruiters will probably just skim over it. And two, it's just not well known what is technology management. But I think the classes are something that you get out what you put in. So some of the classes cover marketing, sales, and how to do market testing, market research, and talk to potential customers. And so a lot of that stuff, you'll be assigned reading for it, but you'll get all of the value out of it by actually doing those things. And so the more that you do those activities as part of the assignments, because they will actually tell you to go out and try to sell something to someone on campus, or if you do the new venture competition, you'll do a lot of those different things. So the certificate itself, I think, if you're thinking in a resume context, probably won't do you a whole lot of good. But the new venture competition is extremely helpful for understanding how to talk with customers, how to research competition, how to size a market. But I don't think all of those are particularly helpful for business intelligence. I think it'll give you a good baseline for anything you want to do after that point. If you're looking beyond just business intelligence as a career, I think that would be very helpful. But a lot of the skills that you'll get out of the TMP certificate go beyond just BI.
Thank you for asking and answering that question, Jason.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of ate that one, but he posted it twice. So
You
I want to make sure
left no crumbs, my friend.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Nothing from my end. This was honestly pretty good.
Yeah.
Sorry
same
if I
here.
sound too surprised.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess we can call it there. And then next week it'll be, Matthew Peterschmidt, Business Intelligence Specialist at Infoblocks, and Giuliano Pula. He's a forensic accountant. So we'll get some non-tech perspective in on some of this stuff.
Cool. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you guys for making the time. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. You can follow Tim and Sam on Twitter. I don't think there's a way to send that. Oh yeah, you can click right on their profiles.
Yep. And if you have any other questions that maybe you didn't want to bring up during this session, feel free to message me privately. My DMs are open.
Cool. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Catch y'all later.
Bye.
Nice work.
So let's see. Let me end the stream.
So when you stream, it records, right? That would be a fucking shame if that did not record. That was actually way better than our first one, I think.
Yeah, our alumni August